And we are live. Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday evening. I'm joined, as usual, by my weekly cohorts, Joe from On a Vinyl and Daryl from Northern Vinyl Guy, and our special guest this evening, Jack the Music Guy. Welcome,
Hey,
Jack. Welcome, gentlemen. How's everybody doing?
Hey,
good, good.
good. So far, so good.
Good. We're excited you're here tonight, Jack, because it's nice to have a young perspective. I don't think of myself as old, and then I realize that I'm getting close to 50, and then I go, Jesus Christ, I am getting old. So it's good to have some fresh perspective. So thank you for joining us, man. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, I'm happy.
How's everybody's week been? What's going down at the record store, Joe? Business okay?
Yeah, business is good. It's been steady actually. Last Friday was really good. Like one of our busier days. That wasn't a Saturday. I know that sounds silly, but we're only there normally Monday to Friday, and then we do one Saturday a month, and those are usually the busier days.
Sure.
So it was probably, like I say, one of the busiest. And then even yesterday, there's the store gets cleaned by a professional cleaning crew on Mondays, but yesterday, and one of the girls said, "Can you put that record away for me?" And I put one away for it. Then they came in and they bought a couple $100 worth of records at the end of the day, her and her boyfriend. So
Nice.
yeah, it was
All
good.
right.
So you just don't know where you're going to get those customers from. And yeah, and she's just a awesome young kid. Bought a bunch of Beatles, bought some Motley Crue. What else did she buy? Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So yeah, it was good. It was good.
Welcome, John, Trevor, Emma, Mike, MGK Buffalo. I don't know why you haven't changed your name yet. Emma, maybe you can join us next week. I'll send you the message on Instagram or whatever.
Do we think Mike should change his name? Do we think he should?
We should. He should, because he's not in Boston anymore.
Or he could just put MGKB, Mike. You could put MGKB, and then it could be Boston. Could be Buffalo.
I'm just calling him MGK Buffalo from now on.
Oh, there you go.
I can't wait to go down now. I've got an excuse to go down and see my Habs beat the Sabres.
Yep.
You know, it's only an hour and a half for me, so
There you go.
I'm excited. And then, not to mention, Michael has a big party in the summer, and now I'm going to have to go, which is all right. Even though I'm antisocial and I hate people and I don't like leaving my house, I'll go to that.
Yeah, I'd go to that too. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm at the age of like, screw it. There's certain people I want to hang around with, but there's a whole bunch I don't. Like, you guys are awesome, and that's why I love
Right.
this. And I'd hang out with you. This is my version. I think you guys think the same. Maybe this is my version of friends coming over. This is what this is. I mean, it's unfortunate that you're all thousands, and in Daryl's case, millions of miles away.
Right.
But it's the same, you know.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that would be different is we'd have music playing, which we can't for reasons, right?
Yeah, the copyright police will shut us down. That we don't want that.
Yeah.
Daryl, how's things going in the Great White North? You beating off the caribou and killing the polar bears and all that other stuff?
Well, speaking of caribou, so I mentioned last week that my father-in-law was going to be driving up here from Chatham, and he got to Haileybury, New Liskeard, and he almost hit a deer coming up here. But he got here safe. It rained 3 of the 4 days he was up here, but it was good. The kids were good, and dinner was good, and all that. Yeah. And over the last couple of days, I've watched a few documentaries, trying to get caught up. I didn't watch the Tragically Hip one, but I did watch one on Tubi called what was it called? Vinyl Nation. It was pretty neat. I think it was a 2018 documentary. And then this morning I watched the Nickelback one, which I thought was pretty cool. I know not everybody likes Nickelback, but it gave me some pretty good insight into Nickelback and why you either like them or you hate them. What I think is hilarious about the whole thing is they kept that death metal Roadrunner records going. So
I didn't actually mean beat off the caribou. I meant like fend them off because they're, get out of my yard, stupid caribou. I didn't actually mean beat off a caribou because that would be, you get in trouble for those kind of things. So,
well, but
get your minds out of the gutter, folks.
Is it hunting week? Is it hunting week this week, Daryl? Or is that next week?
Yeah. So we're on our hunt break for my school. I'll be off till Monday, and then I go back to the the old grind again. But yeah, it's the hunt break here. It's a little bit weird because I mean there's a hunting season in March, April as well. So what happens is a lot of the kids I have in my high school, I mean, it's whenever the geese are flying or the moose are out, right? I mean, you can give a hunt break all you want, but some kids leave a week early. Some kids will be gone a week later. It is what it is, right? But it's kind of cool. It just breaks things up a little bit, I guess, for me from a teaching perspective. Yeah.
And you teach culinary, is that correct, or is that part
Yeah.
of
So I teach some culinary courses. I'm not a certified chef or anything, but I do like the health and nutrition stuff. I also teach history, geography. Those are my main go-tos.
And then do you work with the kids that when they've gone out hunting and they've got things, they've got game or whatever that they've shot?
After they
I've had kids come in and bring stuff in. We often do, like, usually in February-ish, we have what do you call, like a feast, I guess you would say. I think one of the coolest things I've ever seen up here, there was a biology teacher and he got a hold of a guy that's local and they brought a lynx in and they dissected the lynx in biology class.
Wow.
Yeah.
All I ever took in biology was how to jerk off a caribou. Anyway, Jack, how are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm with Emma on this. I can't cook for shit either, but mac and cheese. This is funny. Daryl and Emma are both history teachers. I was going to be a history teacher. I have a degree. I have an honors degree in American history, believe it or not. But thank God I'm not a teacher. I respect
teaching
what
history.
you guys
Teaching
do.
history is fun.
I respect what you guys do, but no way in hell I can do it. Jack, how you doing, man?
Doing good.
Good. Can I say where you're joining us from, or is that like a top secret?
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Jack's joining us from Kansas City, Missouri. So it's good that we have an American on the panel because too many Canadians is like too many caribou. So good you're here. What's shaking with you, Jack? What's going on?
Not much lately, just working. And then I because of you mentioned I don't know where you mentioned it, but you mentioned Queen, how you liked Freddie Mercury, his vocals.
Yeah.
So then I was like, man, I gotta watch that Bohemian Rhapsody movie again. So I watched that again.
What'd you think?
Great. It's great. I love it.
I thought it was awesome. I know people complain about it because they've taken some liberties with the sequencing of events to make it, a little bit better of a story. But
okay.
I think that, the salient points are correct. They just, I think there was an issue that, he told them right before Live Aid that he was dying, and that was not actually the way it was. They knew long before. I don't know the specifics, but still nitpicking. It's still a damn good movie and basically tells the story. So
yeah.
And I thought Remy was good. I know there's some that didn't think he was going to pull it off. And I used to watch Mr. Robot, and I thought as soon as they said, "Oh yeah, that's going to work," because I really like him as an actor, and I thought he crushed it. I thought he did fantastic. So,
especially that Live Aid sequence the Live Aid sequences. When there's big comparisons on YouTube where it's side by side, and man,
yeah. I don't know how many takes it took, but he did a really, really good job. So yeah.
It makes you want to buy that that 4 CDs DVD thing of Live Aid. I might buy that and watch it.
Yeah, I remember that because that was what 1985.
Yeah,
5?
I think 5.
Like I remember it. I didn't watch it because I was only like 7, but like I remember it being a thing, and I've seen it since then. It's fantastic.
Hey, I'm surprised it's 16 hours. I didn't think it'd be that long. That is crazy.
Well, it was between 2, right? It was London and then Philadelphia, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think Philadelphia.
Yeah. And who played both? Trivia question: who played both? I think one played both, maybe 2.
Yes. It was Tom Petty.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on the answer, but I think it might be Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay. Yeah, I think it might be Phil.
I asked the question and I don't even know the answer, but I'm pretty sure someone played both. Like
Phil the
started
workaholic.
and then ended ish, and probably Phil. at the time he would have been massive in '85. So
Oh yeah, I saw on YouTube his. I don't know when it came out, but in the other night he did that, and it sounded so different than the original because I guess they didn't have all the stuff.
yeah, it was a lot different than you get produced. But as long as you do the drum solo, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I was at a football game a couple of weeks ago, and in the warm up, they're playing In the Air Tonight. So I'm kind of sitting in my section,
wow.
and I see me do it, and I see like 3 or 4 other guys in the stadium. You can see they do the drum solo from In the Air Tonight. I
That's
think it's a prerequisite. I think you're actually supposed to do it by law. You're actually supposed to do it whether you're in public or not. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's the thing for you, Daryl, or not, but I always do the drum solo.
I always do it, especially if I'm in the car. I do the drum solo on the steering wheel. No doubt about that.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Rob buggered off, but so Jack, obviously, you're not brand new to the YouTube thing. You've been doing it throughout 2024, correct? I can't remember when you started. I know
I think I started
much on my channel lately, but I know you started 2024 at least, right?
I think it says it started a year ago, so maybe late, or I'm not sure.
Well, you did. I guess. Did you do the 2024 tag?
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah. So you were probably into, because I think I started kind of September, October-ish, something like that. And then and I think you came on shortly after that. So yeah. Pleased with how everything's going so far?
Oh yeah, I like it.
Good. Yeah, it's a nice release. Is there aspirations in your future to be, like a DJ or in the music business, or do you play instruments, things like that?
I think I always thought it would be cool to do what do they call it, the music critics, but not for nowadays. I like to do it from way back then because I couldn't critic this music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be more like a Cameron Crowe back in his Rolling Stones days, but yeah, there's not as many jobs in the music industry now. That's the unfortunate thing. Like there's so many, it seems like there's the big corporations are kind of handling all the artists for the most part, or Doc McGee kind of carries everybody. There's not a lot of DJs anymore because most stations run with 1 or 2 people, and then they just rotate them between all their different stations and they record shit, and it's all it's all that. So we just have to live off our YouTube infamy or something like that and just keep doing this stuff. So
sorry, fellas, I have an 8-year-old that is misbehaving, shall we say?
There you go.
It's like negotiating with the terrorist.
Yeah. Been there, not for a while. It's not a lot different when they get to be about 30 either. I'll tell you. I'll just let you know. But
okay,
you're welcome.
Good to know. Good thing to look forward to. What did I miss that was exciting?
I was just talking to Jack about, if he's got aspirations in the music industry and if he plays instruments and things like that. And we talked a bit about that. But I want to talk about that sexy shirt you've got on there. Talk about that.
That's a good. Well, hold on a second. Let's just do this real quick.
Yeah.
One Mr. Tom Cochrane. Nice. I have a story. Here's my story. Have you heard of Tom Cochrane, Jack? Probably not.
Yeah. He did the Life is a Highway.
Yeah. That's the guy. Very good.
Yeah.
Been around since the early 70s. He was with Red Rider, did solo stuff. He still does solo stuff. He still does stuff with Red Rider.
He did a Lunatic Fringe, right?
Absolutely, yes. His biggest hit in the States. Massive, hugely successful, legendary guy here in Canada. A couple weeks ago was inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame.
Oh, there you go.
I've never seen him play. And I've always wanted to see him play. And I thought someday I would like to meet this man. I've met a lot of musicians, but he is just, like, I revere him. He is one of the most highly regarded musicians in this country. Well, he was playing my hometown on Saturday night, the night before Thanksgiving in Canada. And he's doing a little mini tour that he's calling Songs and Stories. It's just him and his guitar player. It's all acoustic. And he plays the songs, but he tells the story about why he wrote it or what it's about or whatever. fantastic. So I bought a ticket like the day they went on sale, like 4 months ago, and it's 5 minutes from my house. It was great. Went to the show. I should say before that, I noticed a few weeks before that he was offering VIP meet and greet upgrades. I'm like, well, shit, I'm going to do that. It was like $70, but you got like a $50 credit for the merch table. So I'm like, it's only costing me like an extra $20 or whatever. So I'm like, hell yeah, I'll buy the VIP meet and greet ticket. Go to the show. It's fantastic. It is everything that I had hoped it would be. It's hearing all of those songs, Lunatic Fringe, White Hot, Life is a Highway, Boy Inside the Man, Singing Like a Sunset, all those songs, but done different arrangements, right? Like done acoustically, sort of coffee shop style almost. Just awesome. And then I go to the meet and greet. So you got to go to the merch table after the show. And there are 3 people for the meet and greet, me and 2 other people. That's it. I'm like, this is fantastic. They take us backstage, and the 3 of us hung out with Tom Cochrane for like 45 minutes.
Awesome.
And I have to say that he was the sweetest man, the most sincere, nicest guy. Like I said, I've met a lot of people in the Canadian music industry, and this was head and shoulders above any experience I've had meeting anybody. He was just the most humble man, the nicest man. And before I went to see him, I said to my wife, I have this video of my son. My son is 8 now, but I think he was maybe 5 at the time, on a little plastic ukulele, dancing around my office playing Life is a Highway, or screaming Life is a Highway. And I said to my son, I'm going to see Tom Cochrane tonight, and I'm going to show him that video of you playing Life is a Highway. And I showed it to him, and he puts his arm around me, and he goes, thank you for showing me that. He goes, that's incredible. He goes, to think that a song I wrote 40 years ago is being sung by a 5-year-old now. He goes, you don't understand what that means to me, that my song means something to people. He goes, that's incredible. And he goes, what's your son's name? I said, his name is Parker. And he says to his assistant that was in the room, go get me a picture. So she comes back with a picture. I'll show it to you in a sec. And he writes on it, Parker, Life is a Highway, your friend, Tom Cochrane. He goes, give this to your son. I'm like, oh, man, that's awesome. So I should have pulled this ahead of time. I wasn't thinking. So I'm going to get a frame to hang it on his wall. But make myself a little larger. There you go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I talked to him for quite a while. I took a picture with him. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. Hold on a second. Share screen. Let's see here. You guys see that there? Hold on.
Yep.
There you go. Me and Tom.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
great.
Right on.
Yeah.
So that
How's
that was cool. And then, talking for a little bit, and then, I got my picture, and I got him to sign, and I'll pull it next to when one of you guys are talking in a few minutes. I'll show it when it's my turn, but I got him to sign his album Victory Day. That's what I took with me to get signed. And as I was about to leave, I went to shake his hand. He goes, no. I'm like, huh? He goes, gotta give me a hug. I'm like, all right, give him a hug. He's like, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for coming to my show. And thanks for, listening to music or whatever he said. And I was just like, it was just such a great experience. I met one of my heroes, it was cool. It was so cool.
Man. Yeah. That just makes me have a little more faith in humanity, because you could probably try and have that experience with a whole bunch of other people and not have that. And I've listened to Tom from the start and have loved Tom from the start and have seen him, thankfully, numerous times. I've never had a chance to meet him. So to hear that he is as awesome as I hoped he would be, that's just fantastic. That's great. That, like I said, that gives me a little bit of hope in humanity.
Well, let me share one more story then. Tom had told the story when he was on stage about him writing Life is a Highway. And that was after he'd come back from a trip to Africa. And he was really disheartened with what he saw there, the poverty, the violence, all that kind of stuff. So he talked a lot about how that sort of humanitarian work is something that's very important to him. And one of the other guys in the meet and greet after the show was telling Tom how he used to do humanitarian work in Zimbabwe or one of the countries in Africa. I don't remember which one. And they had a great conversation about that. And as he was leaving, the guy's wife, the other fan's wife, was at the door, and she just stuck her head and she says, "Thank you, Tom. You don't know what this means to him." And Tom's like, "Well, come on in." So he talked to the wife for a minute, and she was telling him, like, "Listen, you don't understand how much you mean to my husband." And then she says, "You know what? We live in Montreal. If you're ever in Montreal, let's get together." And Tom goes, "I feel like I'm a kindred spirit with your husband. I would love to do that." So the guy had brought a record, and it was in a cardboard record mailer. He goes, "Hand me your record mailer for a sec." So the guy does. Tom writes down his phone number and his email address. And the guy goes, "You're giving me your phone number?" And Tom goes, "Yeah, text me anytime. Let's get together. I feel a connection with you that I value." And the guy was so emotional, he started to tear up a little bit.
Sure.
And I just thought, what a fucking class act this man is. It was incredible.
That's fantastic.
The whole night was, and the show was amazing. It was great.
Yeah. Live music, man, it's the only way to go if you can. I mean, not the only way to go, but you know what I mean, right? Because that's fantastic. That's awesome.
It was one of the best. I've been backstage at a lot of different shows and whatever. This tops them all. I mean, this is, aside from the time I got a video message from, I'm sitting on my couch and I got a video from Jim Cuddy and Greg Keeler congratulating my wife and I on the birth of my son. This is the next thing. Like, it was an incredible thing. So anyway, I blabbed on enough about it. Absolute legend, bucket list to have met him. So
cool.
There you go.
Right on.
So tonight's topic, now that I took up way too much time, sorry about that. We're going to talk about sort of albums that got us hooked. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. Or albums that sort of drew us into music, that sort of idea. And we thought it was a kind of a nice idea because Jack, being much younger than the rest of us, much newer to music, and I remember some of his early videos when he was just getting into music and showing some of those albums. I thought it was kind of a neat idea, given the fact that Joe's really damn old and Daryl and I are just really old. I thought it would be an interesting discussion in varying perspectives on that. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So however you want to interpret that assignment, that's cool. Do you want to go first, Jack, or do you want one of the seasoned veterans to go first?
I'll let them go first.
All right. Joe, since you're the oldest, you're up.
Age before beauty is what we're going with, eh?
I don't think there's any beauty on here, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, much to no one's surprise that has watched this before, you'll probably know where I'm going to start, but I'm going to start with the first album that I bought. This is the copy of the first album that I've bought. And yes, I've shown it at nauseum, but I'm going to show it again because it just fits again this evening. And this is Kiss Destroyer. So this is the first album that I ever bought with my own money. I think we all remember that. I don't know. I'll let you guys answer in a moment, but I'll let you answer now. Do you remember the album you first bought with your own money?
I have it here.
Yeah, you're going to get, okay, fair.
I'm going to get to it.
Carol, do you have yours as well?
I do. I'm going to get to it in a bit.
Okay, cool. And Jack, I guess you haven't got that far back to go. Have you got yours as well?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So yeah, this is and this is the one. This is the one. So from 19 whatever, this is the album. And I don't need to go on and on about Kiss, but of course that's where I wanted to start, just because that was the album. And Rob and I are going to have a discussion still of my obsession with Kiss and his with the Beatles. But where it all started, and I've talked about this before, for those that are of age, or if you've seen the Kissology box set videos, they were on the Paul Lynde Halloween special, which probably would have been out about this time back in, again, 70, whatever, 77, I think. I can't remember. But I'm 12 at the time, obviously very, soaking up what's going on and things like that. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this Halloween special. Never heard of Kiss before. They'd had albums out clearly before Destroyer and had a pretty big album. And that's probably what got them on the special. But anyway, they come out, they walk out, and they do Detroit Rock City. And there's fireworks going off, and there's flame, and there's smoke, and there's these guys in these massive boots and these costumes and this makeup. So, as a 10, 12-year-old kid, it was like, holy shit, that's pretty cool. And I like the songs as well. There is a lot of other things that go on with Kiss, but I do like the songs as well. And then they came back and they also did Beth during that as well. So that was the impetus of the Kiss fascination for me, was there. And then I had to go back and explore the old albums and went back through the originals, and Alive 1 and then Alive 2 came afterwards. And since then, Gene Simmons has about $1.5 million of my money. But maybe not quite that much. Maybe not quite that much. But yeah, so it all started, like I said, a night much like tonight, watching TV 50 years ago or whatever the hell it is. And on the television they came, and they just I was very impressionable, I guess. And it was just like, holy crap, that's pretty cool. And then from then on, it was what it was. So yeah, that's where I'm going to start. There's other things to come, but that's what I'll start with and get the Kiss out of the way for everybody.
Awesome. Good one.
Did you think they were just costumes because it was a Halloween thing, or did you?
Yeah, I didn't know. That's the thing, because, again, I probably should have heard of them because Alive had already been out. So, if it was the first three, they didn't get a lot of notoriety out of the first three until Alive came out. So it was already out before Destroyer. But yet I still wasn't aware of them. So that was my first, that was the first time I saw them. And it wasn't like the internet, like, oh, I'm going to go on my phone and look and see who these guys are and see everything and anything about them. But after that, it was like the record store the next day and found the older albums, and then bought Alive and started to listen to that, and then started to, because I was aware, would see them on the magazines and things like that. It was a whole different time back then for you young folks. We didn't have the internet back then. We had to go to the library. Anyway.
What's a library, Joe?
Yeah, the library. Yeah.
Very good. All right, Daryl, what do you got?
All right, so I'm going to approach this slightly differently. I don't want to give a whole life history, but I guess it's going to kind of work out to be something like that. So I'm going to start off with the earliest age that I could remember anything about music and listening to music and stuff like that. I was about 4 or 5 years old. I was born in Winnipeg. And then when I was 2.5, I moved to a small town called Red Lake in northwestern Ontario. But my grandparents lived in Winnipeg, and they stayed there until the late 90s. And we used to go visit them all the time because it was only a 5-hour drive or whatever it was. So we'd go visit them once every month or so. And when I was younger, my dad used to bring me to these used record stores. Now, Joe, I don't know how, I'm assuming you're pretty familiar with Winnipeg, at least some of the main roads.
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, I mean, Portage and Main.
There was off of Henderson Highway in Winnipeg, and one off Corridon Avenue downtown. There were some used record stores, and they used to package up 45s, and the guy would sell them for like a dollar. Now, I'm not saying that these are the ones that I got, but my dad used to bring us in, and it got me later in life, I've got a ton of 45s at home. I know not everybody collects them, but my first records that I ever owned were literally 45s that my dad let me and my brother pick out, and we would bring them home, and we had one of the Mickey Mouse record players or whatever it was, and we beat the shit out of these things. But that's what got me, I guess, into the hobby in general, is just that early memory of 45s, and my dad had all kinds of records, just listening to stuff. And I'm going to talk about my dad and my grandfather in a bit. Before I start getting into the stuff that I bought on my own or that my parents bought me. But I guess, like I said, my earliest memories of records that I owned physical copies of, I was about 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. And I guess I just, I don't have a jukebox or anything like that, but the nostalgia of 45s is a pretty cool thing to me. And if somebody were to give me a 45, I wouldn't turn it down, just because I think they're the coolest thing. Brings me back to a period in my life that was just, I guess, youthful and innocent. And, my dad wasn't freaking out because I was scratching the crap out of these records. I mean, he knew that they were just junky country 45s and didn't care, right?
Yeah. Again, that was our Spotify. That was our whatever, because other than waiting for it to come on the radio, you either bought the album, or if you knew you liked the song, you bought the single. And I mean, singles used to be massive. I mean, in the 60s, right? There was some bands, I think all they did was singles. They never necessarily did an album because they just sold so many 45s and singles. And yeah, and that continued through the 70s. I didn't keep many of those. I've got some, but I don't know if I've got any of those original ones. But that was the thing. It's like, if you really wanted that song, short of taking your tape recorder and holding the little microphone up to the radio and getting it on a cassette, you had to go out. You couldn't stream it there. And I know that's not lost on pretty much anybody here, including Jack as well. But yeah, no, that was it. And that was a great way. And there's people that have thousands and thousands of 45s because that's just the way they did it. So.
Excuse me. I have to keep coughing in the microphone.
That's okay.
All right. Jack, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure.
Lay it on us, man.
All right. See if I can grab the right one. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so it's not technically an album, but it is an album, but it's not it wasn't the whole album, just a song off the album. And it's off I've told this story many times. It's off of Tear of Fears, Song from the Big Chair. And it's the song, it's not the song that their biggest one, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. It's Shout. That song is very sentimental to me because me and my friend were playing Monopoly one time at his house, and he had a playlist going, and the song Shout came on, and of course I didn't think of it. And then we just went on, and then whenever I was about to leave, I was like, wait a minute, what's that one song that went, and I was singing the song, and then he said Shout. I was like, man, and it started my love of this. I hate to say old music, but the music.
Oh,
you can say old. Oh. It's not, but you can say old. That's okay. Yeah. Go ahead. I was old by the time that one came out. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, so and then this took me to not technically like an album, but just like a radio station called on iHeartRadio called Cool Oldies. Again, there's that term, oldies. But they played like 70s and 80s music, and that just took me to all the albums, and I started getting albums. But I'll talk about more later from that. But yeah, Shout off of this.
You don't let me ask you, Jack. You're what, like 16, 17? You got your driver's license, if I remember. You're like 17?
I got it. Well, yeah, I think maybe 17. Yeah.
All right. So I love that someone your age, that's 17, 18 now, is listening to 80s music. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oldies as you call it, but I have some faith that someone your age actually appreciates. I know I sound like that old, get off my lawn, but fuck, there's so much music out now. All the stuff that's on the top of the charts is all shit.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's it.
hats off to you, man, for digging a little bit deeper. And
Yeah, and I'm still digging. I'm still finding stuff that amazes me.
that's awesome, man. That's why I wanted to have you on. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. All
That's
right.
a great album too. I mean,
That is a good
that's,
album.
Oh yeah.
that's a great album. You know, there's lots of other stuff that you know you may run across and you may enjoy. That's a great album. So
Yeah,
sorry.
especially that last track. Whenever I first heard that album, I didn't really think of the last track because I was just mainly for the shout and stuff. But then my friend played it in the car, and it got to the last song, and then that was like the most beautiful thing I ever heard. Holy crap, it was awesome.
That's
And
awesome.
it's just like it's like an instrumental, and it just like unsung vocals. It was awesome.
See, and the other thing too, quick, Rob. Sorry, before you go,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
equated it to a time in his life, right? He knew that he was playing something. He was playing Monopoly with his friends, and he heard that song. That happens regardless of whether you're 58 or you're 17, and
Yep.
that's awesome. So that's
Yep.
great.
That's what I love. I don't really care about hearing about, oh, well, this is the music. This album was mastered by so and so played drum. I don't give a shit. What I love hearing is why people connect with things. And someone's got a story about where they were when they heard it or why. I love that. So that's cool. I like that a lot.
I almost pulled the album that I first made a friend with, but I didn't. So you know, yeah.
Richie, how you doing, man? Meet the Beatles. Yeah, Beatles are huge in my. I got a couple Beatles records I'm going to show in a few minutes. Trevor, it shows the lasting power of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It transcends age. How look at the Ramones still selling. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Okay, I'm up now.
You are.
So I said I would pull this quickly, which I should have pulled before. This is my copy of Victory Day that I had Tom Cochran sign. There's his scrawl in gold Sharpie there. So that's very cool. Okay. My musical albums. I'm going to show these kind of in the order that I recall in my brain, which it's been 35 years since I sort of started down the music path. So to my recollection, these were sort of the order that, you know, I got sucked in. So this is kind of a twofer because it's the same artist, but these two albums are kind of intertwined. And it actually does not start with the Beatles. The Beatles was the first thing that was like, holy shit. But the first thing I remember listening to, and I've said it before, it all comes back to my dad. He had a big record collection, you know, always records playing in my house. The first thing I remember grabbing, I might have been, I don't know, 12 when I started farting around with Dad's records. The first thing I pulled was this. And this is actually his copy. This is the copy that I listened to when I was 12 years old. And it's just kind of, you know, it's a 2-record, you know, it's mainly some hits, right? So this is kind of where I started. I wasn't really a big fan of the, as I call them, fat diamond-studded jumpsuit Elvis at the time. I now think he's cool as hell. But, you know, this is kind of where I started, which then led me to buying this album on CD. And this was the one that I was like, you know, got its hook in me. And I just thought Elvis was just, you know, he was the king. Like, I got why he was called the king of rock and roll. And I played the shit out of this. Until I discovered the Beatles a couple years later, which I'm going to talk about in my next round. But this is kind of where it started. You know, this is kind of a Hound Dog, All Shook Up, Heartbreak Hotel, Jailhouse Rock, Love Me Tender, Don't Be Cruel. You know, it's kind of an early greatest hits up to a certain point. I think sort of, you know, pre-comeback special kind of stuff. So Elvis was the first. I remember when the Beatles were doing the anthology, which was kind of what sort of got me started on the Beatles. But I remember, you know, there was talk about, oh, the Beatles are going to come out with new music in a few months. And, you know, if it goes to number one, it could break Elvis's record for the most number ones in North America or whatever it was. And I was like, no, I don't want that to happen. Elvis is the king. No one can dethrone the king. Till I heard the Beatles and I went, holy shit, this just takes it to a whole new level. So for me, it started with my dad's copy of this Elvis compilation, and then it went to that. So that's where it all started for me.
You like his you like Elvis's Christmas music, or just
Love it. Love it.
Man.
I mean, I don't think I've heard an Elvis song that I dislike. I have very little Elvis. I think I might have 5 Elvis records or 6. And I need a lot more because I like him. I just, whatever reason, I've sort of been, my collection has been focused on other things. I have the stuff that like I listen to his Christmas album at Christmas, and I listen to the 68 Comeback Special a lot, and I listen to the early Sun Session stuff, but I don't have a lot of the other stuff. And admittedly, I know very little about his discography because he released so many records.
Oh yeah.
So I got a lot to learn, but if when I started going down that rabbit hole a little bit more, Jeff over at Speaker's Corner is the resident Elvis expert, and he just lives a couple minutes down the road. So if I need a brain to pick, he's the man. But yeah, Elvis was just kind of the first thing that I went, oh, okay, this music thing. So look who's watching us tonight. Steve Westman, how you doing, sir? Violent Community Royalty. Thank you, man, for watching. I watch you all the time. All right. Joe, you're up again.
Quick on the King. Like, he's always kind of ebb and flowed for me a little bit because I was there when he passed away, right? I was around at the time.
You were in the bathroom?
No, I wasn't there.
Oh, what?
But so, and my mom, who is different than the lady that raised me, that was my grandma, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that shortly. But she was a big fan, and like I said, he's kind of comes and goes. He's never gone away, but love it or hate it, because it got panned and then it got raved as well. That one with Butler, is that his name? What's his name? Austin Butler.
Oh yeah, the Elvis movie. Yeah,
and Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
I watched it and it was like, okay, he's back again, because it really did show a little bit of everything. And you and I have discussed before. Yeah, Jumpsuit Elvis is the best Elvis. So
agreed.
But again, my mom at the time, it was all of that original. It was all the Hound Dog and things like that. I mean, it was already starting to be stuff, but her love of Elvis came from the late 50s, early 60s stuff. So that's what she listened to. It was like listening to the new Green Day versus the old Green Day. It was listening to the new Elvis versus the old Elvis in 72, 3, 4, 5 when I was, 8, 9, 10. So
sure.
Sorry, Jack, you had a question?
The Elvis movie was panned. They put in.
Yeah, well, I think I'm not sure if it was that as much as maybe people didn't realize just how much of a dick Colonel Parker was. And Tom Hanks did a really good job of showing that, I guess. Maybe that's where it was. But yeah, it was good.
I like that. That was a good movie.
Yeah,
I still haven't seen it yet. My wife watched it and she loved it. It's on my list, but
yeah, I watched it
on
a lot.
TV.
It's great.
All right, I'm going to blow my street cred here, maybe a little bit. I don't know, maybe not, because I talked to certain guys that you wouldn't think would ever have listened to this band, and they listen to this band too. So I went.
Don't worry about your street cred, Joe. There's only 483 people watching right now.
I got no street cred anyway. So I went from these guys to these guys a little bit as well. Bay City Rollers and SATORDAY Night and the power poppy. They were glam, but without the glam part, I guess. Like, you could take Saturday Night and you could have had Sweet sing it. And I mean, it did really well for these guys too. Teen Idol type of stuff, but you could have had a rock band do that song and it would have done pretty well. Like Ned's Atomic Dust Band from, So I Married an Axe Murderer, I believe. But so, because again, in the mid 70s, there was no Spotify, there was no nothing, and I don't need to reiterate that. But we listened to the radio, and that's where we got our music from. And these guys got the hell played out of them. and I was a boy and I wasn't supposed to like them. But like I said, you know, when Saturday night came on, I sang along and I still sing along. So, you know, they're enjoyed by the female gender much more, I think, than the male gender. But if you just take the songs and you just listen to them for what they are, they're a fun listen. And some of their later albums got a little bit more glam than maybe some of the early ones. But I want to do a video, and I haven't talked to her yet, or I haven't talked her into it. And Rob, you and I discussed this a little bit. I want to have Joanne come with us and show off her collection, because there's some crossover, but there's a lot where she listened to it and I listened to it a little bit and don't admit it, and vice versa, I think. So I think that might be interesting to see the female perspective versus the male perspective. But her favorite guy is David Bowie. So, you know, we all love Dave. Well, I do anyway. But yeah. So from the 4 guys dressed up, blowing shit up, to 5 guys dressed in tartan, that was my mid-70s music, and a whole bunch of other stuff, but that was part of it anyway. So
If I had 1,000 guesses, Joe, that would not have been one of them.
no, I know. After you said that about NWA last week, I thought I'd throw one in there like that, but you know, I don't listen to it often, but I enjoy Saturday night whenever it comes on.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes you've got those records that, you know, you're embarrassed to own, but there's a song on it. I mean, fuck, I have a Partridge Family record.
Yeah, me too. And I listen to it. Yeah, and I listen to it.
But
and
there's
enjoy it.
there's that one song, you know, I Think
Yeah.
I Love You. That song, I fucking love it.
Yeah, it's just a good song. Yeah, for sure.
So when it was in a box of records that was gifted to me, that was just a bunch of junk, I'm like, well, it's free. I'm keeping it. It's got that song on it. And every time I go past in my collection, I'm like, oh man, on a Partridge Family record. But then I'm like, who gives a shit? I love the song. Who cares? I'm not here to
Exactly.
impress anybody.
Nope, that's right. And you're right. It's a great song. I listen to it often. It's definitely one of those when I want to go down that 70s gold rabbit hole. It's right near the top of the list for sure. So
Yep. Well said, man. And good luck getting the missus to do the video. I've been trying to get mine to collaborate with me on a video forever. She will not do it. So
yeah,
I hope you have more luck than I do. So
we'll see. Maybe the wife or the girlfriend, I guess. No, that's wait, what? Sorry.
what?
Huh?
Huh?
I'm breaking
Yeah.
up. I'm breaking up.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
she said.
All right, so I'm going to kind of stick to a lot of mine are going to have like stories and stuff like that. So
Good.
I mean, it is what it is. So
Good.
my next 2 are going to be twofers, just the way it is.
That's okay.
Now
Cool.
these twofers, these 2 genres have absolutely nothing in common with each other, but my biggest influence is my music. I mean, I've mentioned my dad, but my grandfather also plays a part in this. So in 2016, September 20th, my dad passed away. I was at work when I found out, and it was just an all-out rough day for me.
I'm sorry. When did you say your dad died?
September 20th of 2016.
Jesus, mine was September 18th. Different year, but September 18th.
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
That was a pretty brutal day for me.
You and me both, man.
And there was a point in time, and when I talk about my grandpa, I'll get into it a little bit more, but there was a point in time where I just stopped collecting music altogether. I was doing the streaming thing and I just stopped doing it. And I guess when my dad and my grandfather passed away, it brought me back to wanting to start getting into the hobby again. And the first record, one of the few records that my dad bought me actually before he passed away, was this one here. It has no hit songs on it. When I was a kid, my dad used to play this game. He had a pad of paper with a pen or a pencil, and he would just go, "Hey, Daryl, pick a record from the shelf," almost like Mazzy style. And he says, "We're going to play it, and I'm going to tally. You just go through the songs, and you tell me whether you like it or not." And we would just compile these of which albums were the best and which were the worst. Well, this is one of the ones that my dad had. It's a record called Zon. It's a band called Zon. I think they're from Toronto. They only made a few records. And just this Astral Projector cover I always thought was cool. But what I thought was even cooler is when my dad showed me the vinyl, I was like, whoa, they make colored vinyl? And I mean, I was just a little kid at the time. And so my dad remembered that. And about 2 years before he passed away, he bought me that as a Christmas gift. And it kind of got me back into things.
I love that. That's a
now
great
the same
story.
token.
Yeah.
At the same token, May the 12th, 2010. That's my 31st birthday. My grandfather passed away.
Oh,
And so the big thing for me is there was this cassette tape that my dad had, but my grandfather also used to listen to it. It was from my grandfather's era. Most people would not classify Frankie Lane as a great musician by today's standards, you know, that folky country 1950 stuff. But there's a story. We were visiting family in Quebec. And as we all know, and we've all experienced, at least with cassette tapes, when the cassette tape jams in the cassette player in the vehicle, it just keeps going on and on and on. And for whatever reason, that Frankie Lane, Moonlight Gambler, and that Lucky Old Son, Mule Train, even though it was on repeat, I just love that kind of music. And it brings me back to a point in my life when, once again, you know, my grandfather always supported music. He used to come with us to these used record stores and stuff, and my dad. So just the cool things that I used to do. And I think after actually that record, the Frankie Lane one, when my grandfather passed away, that's actually his copy. Me and my brother went through his collection, and we just divvied it up. Actually, my brother actually pushed me out of the way. I tackled him for that record. My brother and I both have the same story. And yeah, I mean, I just love it. I mean, it doesn't matter to me if other people like Frankie Lane. I could listen to that all day. And if somebody was like, oh, that's shit, I'd be like, well, there's the door. If you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to stick around, right? To me, music is about memories. It's about the stories. It's about exactly what you were saying about Tom Cochrane. It doesn't matter to me at this stage of my life what other people think. It's what matters to me, and that's what connects me to the music.
that's all. I love both those stories, Daryl. Thanks for
That's
sharing
great.
that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
These are the stories I love to hear from people. That's great. All right, Jack, what do you got?
All right, let's see. I'll start from this. So I think this might be the first band I got into. Maybe it's Foreigner. Got the CD
Nice.
box set, like a VCLT from Bob. But and speaking of what Joe was saying earlier about the first albums you bought, it's not this copy, but this album I bought. The first thing I bought on CD was this, and it's not even a big album by them, but I loved Foreigner, so I just got this. And Foreigner was like the first band I got into, and of course we got the songs I heard. It all started with from Agent Provocator, from I Want to Know What Love Is. I heard that, and that just hooked me into them. And then I heard the first album. Then I got this is the only Foreigner album I own on vinyl. It's this one, the Double Vision. It's got that, and they got Blue Monday on there. But recently, I think earlier this month, I saw Foreigner live. That was my first ever concert of a band I saw. And the only sad thing was it wasn't the original Lou Gramm. He wasn't there. It was the guy that joined in 2005. But it was still a very fun time. I loved it. Yeah, he did. Yeah, man. This band is just amazing. I listen to them much now, but back then I couldn't get enough of them. So yeah, Foreigner.
I'll say this again. I'm amazed that someone your age today, the first band they got into was Foreigner. Like that's awesome, because
That's amazing.
I don't know what your friends listen to, but I can't imagine any of them are listening to Foreigner. But I imagine I listen to Drake or else whatever the fuck kids listen to nowadays.
Yeah.
So man, I'm absolutely thrilled that this is the kind of stuff that there's some kids your age that are getting into this, which that's awesome. Because
Yeah.
I grew up in the 80s, so this is what I was listening to when I was younger than you are. So I love it, man. That's great. That's fantastic. Okay, I'm up next. Okay, so it started with Elvis. And as I alluded to, I discovered the Beatles after that. I knew I Want to Hold Your Hand, She Loves You, a few of the big hits, but that was really it. I didn't know much about the Beatles. I watched the Beatles anthology when it aired live on ABC, and I remember watching with great anticipation at the end of the first episode. There's a countdown in the credits, and it's like new Beatles song in 60 seconds, and it was counting down. Excuse me. And my dad had said to me, like, listen, this is a big deal. There hasn't been a new Beatles song in 35 years or 39 years or whatever the hell, 35 years. So I was like, okay, this is cool. And I remember watching the premiere of Free as a Bird. I was like, I dig this. And because the anthology aired in 3 episodes on TV, but then you could buy the expanded edition later on VHS and DVD. But the first one was kind of about sort of the Beatlemania, mop top suit kind of thing. And that's the kind of Beatles music that I had been familiar with. I didn't know the later stuff yet. So I'd sort of got into that. And my dad had some Beatles records, and I've talked about some of them before. I still have my dad's Beatles records. And I had played a little bit of, Hollywood Bowl and whatever. But the first Beatles record I bought, not the first album that I bought with my own money, that we'll talk about that in a minute. But Elvis segued into this nicely. I remember my dad and I went to, there was a place called the CD Warehouse, and it was exactly what it sounds like. And that's sort of when I started buying my first records, and I was looking at Beatles records, and the first one I bought was Live at the BBC. And I bought it because, this is the early, Beatlemania kind of stuff. And Dad said to me, he goes, I would buy this one because it's live, and live stuff is cool, and, it was on the radio, and, I would give this a shot, because he looked at it and he goes, oh, there's some songs on here that they've never put out before. So I'm like, all right. And man, I played the living crap out of this CD. I still have it. It's over on my shelf. It has seen better days, but I still have it. Bought it on vinyl a couple years after that. But this is kind of where it started with the Beatles. The first one of my dad's Beatles record that I played all the time was Beatlemania with the Beatles, which was the first North American Beatles record. Came out in Canada before even the VJ release came out in the US. Played that a lot. But I'm showing this one because it's Beatlemania, and it's this one. Kind of started it with the Beatles. Fast forward maybe 6 months or so. This is sort of part 2 of the Beatles story. I heard the album that changed my life, and that's Sgt. Pepper. I remember vividly where I was. I, by this time, was headlong into the Beatles, and I was, 3/4 of the way into their catalog. And I don't casually, let's listen to it. I dive head in, right? So, I was probably, 8 albums into the Beatles catalog. I knew every song, every word, or whatever. And I was still working through a few of them, and I hadn't heard Sgt. Pepper yet. I knew a couple of the songs, but I wasn't really familiar with it. I was at my best friend's girlfriend's house. He was there too. Nothing shady going on. And she had it on CD, and she goes, "You want me to put this on?" I'm like, "Absolutely, it's the Beatles." And just from the first notes of the Sgt. Pepper intro, I was just like, what am I hearing? Like, I I just sat on her couch and I didn't move for 40 minutes. And I soaked up every minute. And I just, from that day on, I absolutely love this album. It is my favorite album of all time. I own more copies of it than I should. Man, what an album. Of all the copies I own, this is the one I listen to. This is an original UK mono first press, and it sounds fantastic. And I have to have it because it doesn't get any more authentic than that. The first pressing from the country that they came from, with the master that they were involved in the mixing of. I mean, this has just changed my life. So from then on, I've been a Beatles fanatic, and I still am to this day. I own hundreds of Beatles records, but the Beatles in general changed my life, and there's so much of the Beatles catalog that marks various events in my life, but those were sort of two of the ones that really just got their hooks in me and went from there. There you go. Any thoughts, John?
Nice.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna kind of do a twofer of a little bit because, again, I was raised by my grandparents. My mom was always around, but up until a certain age, I always thought she was my sister. It was one of those. So it was 1965. She was 18. She got pregnant. Didn't work that, she was going to be able to raise me. So my grandparents raised me. So they were, I can't remember exactly how old they would have been at that point, but they were of a different era, right? They were 40s, and like my dad was in the war and in World War II and things like that. So they were that, but so I didn't really have the influence of my mom, who was the Beatles, and as I talked about earlier, Elvis and things like that. So for me, the very first that I remember hearing and becoming aware of the Beatles, to continue with that thread, is I was home from school one day, and I don't know if I was loopy on NyQuil or all the Vicks that your mom used to rub on your chest when you're a little kid and you're home from school, but this came on the television. So this was my first introduction to the Beatles. And for those that have seen Yellow Submarine, I'm not sure if that's the best first introduction or not, but it was what it was. The Blue Meanies come out at the beginning, but then Eleanor Rigby kicks in, and it's like, oh, that's pretty good. And again, so
you must have thought you were hallucinating and were extra sick.
Well, like I said, that was the thing. It might have been the NyQuil, I don't know, whatever, but it was great. So that was my introduction to the Beatles, because we had the radio, and this would have been mid 70s, because I was home from elementary school. So at that point, I don't remember them getting played a lot on the radio at that point. It was like the lull or whatever. McCartney was getting played, and they were into their solo careers and that. So I didn't have that as a place to hear them. And again, my mom, who would have been of the age that was a Beatles fan and an Elvis fan, and that was not around at that point. It was my grandma and my grandpa that raised me. So that was my first introduction into the Beatles, and then it just continued from there. But a lot of my early music, at least in the house and at home, was guys like these two, like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Which at the time, right, again, I'll keep this here and reference it. This is what I was listening to down in the basement. I had it cranked up on my Lloyd's stereo that I bought from Radio Shack, on the piece of shit that it was. And I had my tennis racket, and I was pretending to play guitar. But meanwhile, upstairs, and especially on Saturday nights, and I remember this too, my dad didn't drink a lot, but on Saturday nights, he'd get a case of Heidelberg beer. And him and mom would sit there and they'd listen to records, and it would be a lot like these guys, like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, and probably Jimmy Lane and some of those same artists. And they'd have a couple beers and they'd dance in the living room. And that was their Saturday night. So I'm downstairs listening to Kiss, and they're upstairs listening to Frank Sinatra, but they put up with it. Mine was probably a little louder, but every once in a while I could just hear Dean go up a notch or whatever. They would try and one up me, but so at the time I had no appreciation for these crooners, but I'm not exactly sure what it was that snapped or what clicked or when it was that I went, you know what, that's pretty damn good music. And maybe in my head all along, because I'd heard it and I was around it, and my dad had a massive collection of that that he played often. He had an office downstairs that he worked at from home, and he'd be like us. He'd have music on. It just happened to be Dean and Frank and Sammy Davis Jr. and all of that. So, I mean, I always had it in my head, but of course, oh God, I can't listen to what my dad listens to, because that's not cool, or at least it was a lot less cool at the time. I think my kids, to me, is a little bit of a different story, because I am cool, as my dad was. But so the generation was just different, completely different, right? But now I love listening to those guys, and not just the reminiscing part and the remembering my dad. I call him my dad. He was my grandpa, but so it's not just that. That's a big part of it, but it's just good music as well. So it's stuff that I never ever would have listened to 30 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever. But now I can certainly put on and thoroughly enjoy it. And then I can put Kiss back on again too, which is kind of nice. So it is nice to have that bit of a broad range from Kiss to the Bay City Rollers to Frank Sinatra. So that was parts of the influence of my parents. But again, a big part of it was they never came down and said, turn that shit off. They never took my albums away. Like, I'd bring home Kiss and I'd bring home, all that kind of stuff. They never did any of that. And I'm not sure if that happened to you guys in any way, shape, or form. I know that happened to other people where they had to hide their albums, or, they'd get a Donny Osmond album and they'd slip their Kiss record inside of it so they could have it around. And then they put their headphones on and listen to Kiss and set out the Donny Osmond album or something like that. But no, mine were super supportive all the time. They bought me records. It was great. And again, they were of a different generation. So I was listening to some of their stuff, and by osmosis, or at least through the floorboards, they were listening to some of mine. I don't think my dad ever enjoyed Kiss, but he put up with it. So it's pretty cool. It was great.
I was thankful growing up because, my dad was born in 1948, so a little younger than yours, obviously, but I grew up, and even though my dad was born in the 40s, he's listening to Cream and the Yardbirds, John Mayall and Eric Clapton and Led Zeppelin and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah. I'd be at some of my friends' houses, and their parents would be listening to, Frank Sinatra. No disrespect, not my thing, but I was thankful that I grew up in a household that, was listening to that kind of music, and my dad was cool with whatever the hell I want to listen to. He would not censor any of it. So
that's fantastic. That's good. Yeah,
I have that Frank Sinatra album.
Well, there you go. That's good.
That's good, man.
Yeah, that
Summer Wind. Like, you just put Summer Wind on, and it sounds really good too. And the orchestration and stuff. It's a lot of really good stuff. Dean is certainly more of a crooner type of a guy, like, Who Loves You Baby and stuff like that. Frank was pretty damn cool, as was Dean and the rest of the Rat Pack. But Frank just had that little extra, that little bit more. And Nancy did all right for herself as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Daryl, what you got?
All right, so kind of tailing off of what Joe was just saying, my household, my parents didn't care what I listened to either, and not for this pick, but for my next one, it's going to become a little more obvious based on the one album that was purchased by one of my parents to me. But now this is where I'm getting into the good stuff, where I'm starting to purchase things either with my own money or my parents' money. So the very first 2 cassette tapes that I remember ever owning on my own or purchased with my parents' money. Now up in the north, we used to do, I don't know if you guys do them in Southern Ontario, but the Toronto trip thing in grade 8. So in the north,
that I live 40 minutes away. No.
Yeah. So we used to do a Toronto trip. We'd fly out of Thunder Bay and go there and do all the Toronto stuff. So I was in Eaton's Mall, downtown Toronto, this 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid from a town of 2,000 people, not knowing what to expect when I got to Toronto. Now, I'd been there with my parents and stuff, but never on my own. So I was in the food court. I had just bought a cassette tape. I actually had to buy it again because I left it on the table to go get food at the food court. And when I came back, my cassette tape wasn't there anymore. Somebody took it. So the first one I ever bought was actually Snow's 12 inches of snow with Informer
God.
and Runway.
No.
That was with my own money. I don't own that one.
Thank
But
God.
what I do own is a second one that I bought with my parents' money. And that is Vanilla Ice's To the Extreme.
I want that so badly.
I remember the first time, I know exactly where I was. I was sitting in the car, the first time I ever heard, you know, the whole Vanilla Ice thing. And I was sitting in a car and my dad was singing to this. Me, as a 12-year-old kid, I didn't realize that it was it was basically, you know, sampled from Queen.
Yep.
Right? I didn't know that. And then later on in well, we all remember the Columbia House days.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Well, Jack might not, but we do.
in 95, 96, after the Columbia House stuff, when my first job I ever got was in a clothing store. And I used to get a 30-minute break, like most. I would usually work only weekend shifts because I was in high school at that time. And I only used to get 30 minutes for the break. Well, it was about 12 minutes to get to the nearest convenience store that sold records or CDs. So on my lunch break, I used to just dart out, because it was always payday every second week, the first CD I ever bought with my own money. I will never listen to this ever again. I can't stand it anymore. I don't like it anymore, but I will never get rid of it. Just for the soul. This is an original minus the case, because I got rid of all my cases. But the actual first CD I ever bought on my own was Ace of Base's The Sign.
Oh, my God.
Ooh, no.
Holy shit.
And so, I mean, it just brings back that. I'll listen to Vanilla Ice all day long.
Sure. Me too.
Ice Ice Baby and that kind of thing. But I won't listen to Ace of Base anymore. I just don't like it. But for whatever reason, in 1992, 1993, I liked Ace of Base. I have no idea why. I remember just dancing around the living room with my brother, my sisters. And yeah, it's one of those rare occurrences where I own something that I definitely will never listen to again, but just for nostalgia's sake, I'll keep it.
You saw the sign and it opened up your eyes.
That's for
You
sure.
know, I am 100% comfortable with my age. It is what it is, but it pisses me off a little bit that the first CD you bought, I was playing in the bar as the DJ. So I was already old enough to be DJing in the bar when you bought the first freaking CD. So anyway,
So, Vanilla Ice. I hate rap. Can't stand it. I love Ice Ice Baby. I want that record on vinyl so badly. I want an original. Funny story. I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, my wife and son and I are sitting on the couch, and some TV commercial comes on, or it was in a movie or something. And it was like the first little, few lines of the song. And instinctually, I just start singing Ice Ice Baby. And I just keep going. By the time I get all the way through the first verse and into the chorus, I look over at my wife and son, and they're looking at me like I'm from another fucking planet.
yeah.
My wife is like, who are you? Why did I marry you? And more importantly, how the fuck do you know all the words to Ice Ice Baby? I go,
Why is that
I love it.
inside you?
I don't know what to tell you. I
I
love that
used to
song.
have a bus driver. I used to have a bus driver in high school. He used to play Cypress Hill. And the first track on that Black Sunday is I Want to Get High.
Yep.
And all the stoners on the bus used to love this bus driver. He'd play Cypress Hill, and then he'd play Onyx with that song Slam. And just, I don't like rap either, but for whatever reason, it just, these are the things that just I remember about high school and sitting on the bus listening to this. I mean, I don't call it shitty music, but it's not music that I typically would have in my collection.
Exactly. I love that story, Daryl. That's great, man.
Thanks.
God, sorry I'm coughing, gents. I can't help it. Gotta
That's
refill
all right.
my water bottle in a minute. Jack, what do you got next?
All right. This is gonna be another first purchase, but because I bought the CD, that was my first CD, and then this is my first LP that I bought. I listened to this band and I got to this album and I was hooked ever since. And then I was like, man, I need to have this on a physical format. So then I didn't want to buy LPs because they were a lot of money, a lot more than they were for you guys back then. But so then I was like, you know what, it's worth it. So I bought it and I got U2 War.
Oh.
Yeah, this
Good.
Good call.
Yeah,
Good call.
man, this is an album I listened to repeatedly back then. I say back then, like a couple years ago. I listened to her a lot, and you got a Sunday Bloody Sunday. And my favorite song on here is "Drowning Man." Bono's vocals on that are just like actually breathtaking, and it kind of made me. I heard it one time in my car, and then that song just made me teary eyed. I don't know, that's just great. That song. And yeah, this is I don't like much more U2 after this, but this, yeah, I knew Rob would.
Oh, I love it, man.
Yeah, but I like the hits, and I just recently got a record collection from my aunt, and she had Joshua Tree, so I have that now. But yeah, I like those first three songs, but I haven't got much into that. But this was the album for me. This is just, man, great.
That's cool. I have a U2 story coming up in a few records, so
Yay.
that's good, man. Oh, I love it. And like old school U2, like
Yeah, exactly.
beginning of the
Yeah,
career
no kidding.
U2. Good for you,
Yeah.
man.
I love
So
that.
unless
October
you're
album.
going to unless you're still going to talk about it eventually, what did mom and dad listen to? Did they influence you? Do they still influence you? Unless you're getting to that.
No, I'm not. It was mainly my friend with the shout. That's what happened because everybody else just liked the music of their year.
That's
Definitely not.
fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, your mom's probably not that old, so she'd probably be like an '80s, '90s baby listening ish, right? So,
Mhm.
so
All the-
when
all the-
you said, "Hey, mom, I'm going to listen to you too," was that a good thing, bad thing, or is she indifferent to that? Or
She
dad,
hates
I guess
it too.
she hates you too. Well,
Oh yeah. She
oh
does
well.
not.
Well, we won't hold it against her then.
Yeah.
My wife hates it whenever I even reach for U2 record, she's gone. Richard says that's a great starting point. I agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Curtis still knows every word of Ice Ice Baby. You and me got to wrap it for a short or something, Curtis. No, I'm kidding. Nobody wants to see that shit.
The first time I heard that album by U2, I was kissing a girl that lives in Swan River, Manitoba. So there you go. I remember exactly the first time I listened to that album. She had it and she put it on.
My U2 story involves a girl too, and like I said, it's coming up. So,
Excellent. There you go.
but it's not next. Speaking of next, I'm next.
You are.
Sorry, I had to, when you were telling your story, Jack, I needed to refill the water bottle or I wouldn't be able to talk. Cold. Okay. I'm going to do a twofer just because I want to make sure I get through my whole story here. First record or first CD that I ever bought, first album I ever bought with my own money was Clapton's Unplugged, which came out in 1992. So that's when I bought my first album. And then within a few weeks, I bought Live at the BBC by the Beatles. So, I mean, I had watched this when it was on MTV, and I didn't know a lot about Clapton. I mean, I don't know if I could have named 4 Clapton songs at the time, but I knew that Dad listened to Clapton all the time because he was listening to the Yardbirds and Cream, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. He had a bunch of, so I heard Clapton all the time, and I knew that he was sort of a revered guitar player, but that's really all I knew. And then I watched the Unplugged, and I thought, this is fantastic. Not only was he good, but I also loved the concept of the Unplugged series, and it was the first one that I had seen. I think it might have been the first one. I don't know, but anyway. So I bought it on CD, played the shit out of it, still have it. I have the deluxe edition. Then when it finally came out on vinyl, I bought it, and I still listen to it fairly regularly. Clapton's dickhead, but I really enjoy his music, and that was the first excuse me, the first album that I bought. And I think that's kind of what started to shape my sort of gravitation towards guitar players. I don't know if you guys know, but I kind of have a thing for guitars. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before.
No.
You know, so I think it kind of, not that I don't think Clapton's not my favorite guitar player by any means, but I think I just admired what he did and sort of how effortlessly it seemed for him. So I just sort of gravitated to the guitar as an instrument, and I sort of attribute that to Clapton. And that was my gateway to listening to other Clapton stuff like Slow Hand and 461 Ocean Boulevard, and all that kind of stuff. So first one I bought with my own money. Continuing along, so it was Elvis, it was the Beatles, it was this Clapton album. And then other than Sgt. Pepper, the most influential album in my life, Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory, 1995. I have talked about this album 100 times on my channel. This was the first album that I discovered on my own. This wasn't something that, obviously my parents weren't listening to Oasis. My friends weren't listening to Oasis. My girlfriend was, but, I wasn't like her band. It was like she'd listen to it all the time or anything. I remembered, we have Much Music, which is like MTV. I remembered seeing Wonderwall a lot. And I went, this is all right. So I sort of took a gamble. No, after I saw Wonderwall, I saw the video for Don't Look Back in Anger, and I was like, holy shit. Went out, bought the CD, and I listened to this album probably 4 times a day for that entire summer. And it's kind of like the soundtrack of that summer. Everything that happened in that summer reminds me of this record, and this record reminds me of that. And every time I hear anything off of this record, you remember what it sounded like, you remember what it smelled like, you remember it's like you're in a bloody time machine. So this album to me, it sentimentally means a lot, because there were some significant milestones in young Robbie's life that happened along with this album. But it means a lot to me, and Oasis is one of my absolute favorite bands. And no, I'm not going to go see them. That's a whole other topic I don't want to talk about because I'm heartbroken about it. But nevertheless, What's the Story, Morning Glory?
I think everyone watching this evening, and anybody that watches this later, our goal in life over the next 6 months is to find Rob a pair of frickin' tickets to go and see Oasis in Toronto. I got New York, but that doesn't work. So I couldn't get.
So here's the thing.
Got both, and he's going to Toronto, not New York. So
here's the thing. Here's what happened. I logged in for the sale, and I was 32,000th in line. And I thought, probably not going to happen, but I'm going to wait it out. Went upstairs, made some lunch, came back down. I was 15,000th in line. Okay. When did something else came back? I was like 2,000th in line. So I sat there, and I made it to the front of the queue. It was number 1. And then it popped up. I could buy tickets for Toronto. So I picked the furthest seat away from the stage, hoping that it would be the cheapest. And it was at $360 plus fees. And I went, I can't do it. Could I have done it? Yeah. Would my wife have given me shit? I find out later. She goes, no, because I know this is a once in a lifetime for you. You could have done it. And I said, you know what? It is, but still, that's 400 and change after fees. And I said, that's irresponsible. I said, I can't do it. So I could have gone, but I made the responsible financial decision, which I have regretted every day since.
Yeah.
That I didn't. But that's why I'm not going to Oasis. It's all my own fault, so don't have any sympathy for me. It's all good.
I have something to say about the MTV. That's the most selling live or MTV, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That one, and I think the Nirvana one's up there too. I mean, those.
Yeah.
Which
Nirvana, yeah.
we have as well. My wife has that one, but
I watched that one.
fantastic. Those unplugs are great. I mean, there were some that were shit, but by and large, most of them were pretty damn good.
The
Yeah,
Kiss
that-
one was even good.
What's that?
I said the Kiss one was even good. So
Yeah.
it was.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, everybody watching, anybody that watches this after it's aired, the goal is to find Rob some reasonably priced, anywhere between free and $200.
Sure.
Okay. That's what
Sure.
that's our, and just one, or do you need two? Like if we're gonna set this up,
One
let's
would
go.
be fine. One
Okay,
would be fine.
cool. All right. Okay. That's the goal, everybody. Get on her.
Look at this. John spent $2,000 on Billy Joel between tickets and merch.
Ooh.
Yeah, you know, John, I should have spent it. But here's the thing. I'm trying to be responsible. By choice, we are a one-income household. My wife is a stay-at-home mom. So, you know, we're not rolling in it. You know, we're not destitute either. We have no debt, but I'd like to keep it that way. So for once I made the decision not to. And I looked at it like this. That money will buy a hell of a lot more records. But then again, that money would have bought some amazing memories. So this may go up there with my regrets, like the time that I could have bought Brad Whitford from Aerosmith's guitar and I didn't. That's a big regret too. And that's a true story for another day. So all right. What do we got here? Richard says we're all such good role models for Jack. I'm glad our first albums were Cannibal Corpse or something. Yes.
Yeah.
John's wife gave him the thumbs up. I hesitated, but they went for it. I love your wife, man. That's awesome. If she let you do that, that's pretty freaking cool. Joe, you're up.
All right. I would be remiss as a good Canadian kid to not mention this label. Not so much the album, but this label. And that's going to be a little K-Tel.
There you go.
So for those of the age, and they went into, I don't know, did they make any in the 90s? I know they made some in the 80s. I've got
Probably like
Metal
maybe
for
the
Life.
very early 90s, maybe.
Yeah, maybe early 90s. And I think everybody here and everybody watching, I don't think K-Tel is a big surprise to anybody, but it was just a company out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, that put 8,000 songs on one album. You got about 2 seconds of each song. They made it sound right, though. They did the right cuts. That was the thing. I mean, if you didn't know, you didn't know, I think. And there were some songs where it actually was the whole song because it was just short enough. I thought I read somewhere there was a line, and if it was like 240 or something and under, you got the whole song. And if it was 240 and over, there was an edit. Freebird's about 4 minutes long, I think, on a K-Tel record. That's about it. You don't get any guitar solos. It just ends. But anyway, this is not necessarily the first one I got. This is the pinball one. And they did some cool stuff. But, yeah, I mean, you guys are all familiar. Jack, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the K-Tel of the world. There was K-Tel. There was also Ronco was another one that did a bunch of stuff as well.
Would you say
I have a couple of quality ones here.
Yeah.
Same idea. Yep.
That was another one. So yeah, you know, this has 20 songs on this album. Now this is older songs, so they were short to begin with, but they would basically take the songs, and they licensed everything. I mean, they weren't doing it illegally, and I don't even know how many KTEL records there were, but there has to be. I don't know if there's 1,000, but there's a couple hundred or 300 at least, because they were popping them out 1-2 a week, and then they also did greatest hits. Like there's a lot, like there's a Gordon Lightfoot greatest hits, and that's a KTEL. So it wasn't just the compilations. They were a pretty big deal. And then I'm not sure what they did. And this one's old enough that it's got Chad Allen and the Guess Who, not just
Holy
Guess Who.
smokes.
That's Chad Allen and the Guess Who on that one. So there you
Okay,
go.
so trivia question. What were they before Chad Allen and the Guess Who?
I know the answer, but I can't remember.
Chad Allen and the Impressions.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
The five, I've got like a half Guess Who and a half, I think, the Silhouettes, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Did the Silhouettes turn into 5-man electrical band? So whoever
think
turned
so.
into the 5-man electrical band, it was before that, and it's half is the Guess Who early, and the other half is the Silhouettes. So,
That's
but
cool.
yeah, I mean, I don't think they were only Canadian. Americans, like Richard can let us know. I think KTEL was everywhere. Yeah, he's talking about it. So they were everywhere, but out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, 100 songs on each side, not the whole album, 100 songs on each side of your KTEL album, and they put out 5 a week. I'm not sure, but they sold a ton of them.
The original CD burn.
Yeah, very much so. And you know what? There's not a lot, but again, if you didn't buy a single, that's where you got songs like, as an example, the 5-man electrical band, that song, The Werewolf, that was never, I don't believe, officially on an album. It was either a single or it was on a KTEL album as well. It got put on greatest hits packages later. But so there was every once in a while, that's where you found, if you didn't buy the single, you'd have to buy that. You couldn't get some songs, not very many, but some songs you could only get on the KTEL records. So that and Ronco, and you were saying there's a couple other ones as well. So
Yep. Brings back some memory, some memories.
yeah.
All right, Daryl.
All right. So before I tell in, Joe, I have that exact KTEL record, that pinball one. It's super cool that they did that whole die cast, cut out the pinball machine. It's just
Pretty good,
cool
actually. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And this one's in great shape. I'm not sure why it's in such good shape, but it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Usually when you go into like a Value Village, those KTELs are beat the crap right out of.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people played the hell out of them.
Oh yeah. Well, it was
All
a
right, so
perfect
this-
party.
Sure, because they were like what, $6 or something stupid?
Yeah.
You couldn't make a mixtape for that price.
Exactly.
Jack's going,
All right,
what
so
the hell's a
this is going to be another twofer. So you mentioned earlier, Joe, about your parents didn't really care what you listened to and all that kind of stuff, and it was the same thing in my household. I mean, if there was an explicit advisory thing, it was just kind of looked. I mean, my dad bought me Cypress Hill's Black Sunday. I mean, what does that tell you, right?
There you go.
Now I normally don't talk too much about my mom. I mean, my mom lives in London. See her a few times a year for sure. But one of the strangest things about the 90s is there was a point in high school when we got to that alternative stuff and we got to that hard, I don't want to call it heavy metal stuff. I don't know what you'd classify this one. I call it alternative. But there was a band that used to show up. There was this TV record. I don't know what you would call it. It was almost like not MTV, but basically there was this phone number that ran along the bottom of the screen, and you could call in a choice, and it would play the video on the TV. I think the TV channel was called The Box or something like that. And Primus, which is an alternative band, they're my favorite band of all time. Now they're just weird stuff. But my mom loves Primus. I have no idea why. She was the one that encouraged me to buy Pork Soda with Mr. Crinkle and the violins and all that kind of stuff that are on there. There's a few other really just weird songs that are on there, but this is my favorite band, if not of the 90s, of all time. So I love that. I'd love to get Sailing the Seas of Cheese on vinyl, but it's just too expensive and too hard to find. So that kind of brings me to a time with my mom. At the same time, when I was in high school, my mom was working at this clothing store, a different clothing store than the one I worked at. And you remember those spinny racks that had the cassette tapes and maybe like a handful of CDs in them and had to unlock them? Well, Tools Undertow was in there, and my mom was working at this clothing store. Don't ask me why they were selling Tools Undertow on cassette tape. And my mom used to get a discount. And even though that explicit lyrics thing that's right down there in the bottom corner, over here somewhere, right there. Anyway, that's the one that has Sober and what does it have? Intolerance, Undertow, the title track, and Swamp Song and stuff like that. I guess at the time, I mean, as strict as my mom could be, I thought she was the coolest mom to let me have a explicit lyrics album in the house. You know, she just let me play my music in my room. I had Korn, the Korn self-titled one, and Ball Tongue came on one time when I was in my room. It scared the shit out of my mom. It was but yeah, once again, just kind of going back, I mean, these two albums, Undertow and Primus's Pork Soda, I mean, those are my high school days. They were my jam, and my buddies that I had in high school, they were into Nine Inch Nails and stuff like that. These are the things I used to listen to, and Ministry, and I had to get them on album later on. The one that I'd want the most though is the Anima the Anima CD. I have it on CD, but it's so hard to find on vinyl. I don't even know if it was ever officially pressed. So maybe one day.
Awesome.
Good one.
That's good.
Presidents of the United States. Amazing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Have you watched? It's on Paramount Plus. Our bass players, Humans 2. Have you watched that, Daryl? Because the bass player from Primus.
No, I'd love to watch it. No, I'd love to watch it. Les Claypool's, to me, the best bassist that's ever come about. But he's just he's more of a slap bassist, right? So if you're going to compare him to other stuff, you can't really compare him to other bassists. But I think he's a pretty cool bassist.
It's a great interview between him and Geddy. It's at his farm, and that you should seek it out if you can find it. And then they talk about this one bass that he owns that he bought that is pretty cool. So yeah, if you can find it, I would look for it for sure. So
like I remember when Primus played at Woodstock '93, and they got about a quarter of the way through the American national anthem, and then he's like, "That's all I know." And then they moved on. And they were playing those damn blue collared tweakers, like they're playing a song about meth addicts, and then they play the national anthem. It's just crazy stuff.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right, Jack, you're up.
All right. Oh yeah, this is a cool one. Basically, I'd say this is a blind buy-ish. Not really buy, but that Steve from All the Wars of Stage got me, and it's this. This is one of the first LPs that I played on my turntable, and then it got me hooked on playing stuff on my turntable. And this is their second one, because the first one is the one with the Frankenstein with the instrumental, and then and the free ride on there. But I haven't heard that album yet, but I played this one, and this just blew me away. I didn't think an album could be this good. Because you got some kind of I think Easy Street's my favorite song in here. That's just a great song. But yeah, this really put me into listening to LP, so that's pretty cool.
Nice.
And it was thanks to somebody giving it to me.
That's a good record to have too. That's great.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed. I have a story that goes with that. I'll save it.
Are you sure? You want to share your story, Joe?
Okay, a quick story. So the very first concert I ever went to, I talked about Kiss being the first record, but the very first concert ever I went to was the Expect No Mercy tour by Nazareth. and it was the Edgar Winter group that opened for him. So that's the quick version of the story. But it was Edgar Winter that opened. So my first concert. So in fact, my first concert was actually the Edgar Winter group, and then Nazareth. So there you go. And I had the biggest contact high I ever had in my whole entire life.
Okay. I'm going to go next, and I'm going to go this way. So after Elvis and the Beatles and Oasis, I was listening to the radio and having trouble talking today. Sorry. And I heard this song come on the radio because every morning, Mom and I listened to the local radio station, which was an oldies station, so 50s and 60s and 70s. And I heard this song called Up on Cripple Creek. And I'm like, ooh, I like that. And so I remembered some of it, and I was kind of singing it that night. And my dad goes, that's Up on Cripple Creek. And I go, you know that? And he goes, I know that. He goes, I've seen them before they were famous. And so I don't have on CD or vinyl the first album that I have by the band. It was their greatest hits. It's kind of got a white cover and there's like a gold tree on it. This is the closest I have to it. It's the band's anthology. And so that sort of got me into all of the hits, The Wait, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Up on Cripple Creek, Stage Fright, The Shape I'm In, all the big hits they had. And so then I'm like, well, I'm intrigued by this, whatever this sound is, because I hadn't heard anything like it. Americana, I guess is what you would call it, even though 4/5 of the band are from Stratford, Ontario. And so Dad had a bunch of records by the band. Everyone loves music from Big Pink, the first album, and it was good. But then I put on this, their second album, their self-titled, everyone calls it the Brown Album. And I was blown away. Still to this day, one of my favorite albums of all time. Because it got me into some of the deeper cuts, like Whispering Pines, Jemima Surrender, Jawbone, Unfaithful Servant. Everything about this, I was just, it opened up literally a whole new world of music for me. And a very large collection, a very large portion of my collection still to this day is this sort of alt country, roots rock, Canadiana, Americana, not Americana like Sam St. John Americana, but this sort of Canadian singer-songwriter kind of stuff. I mean, this would lead me into other stuff like Gordon Lightfoot and whatever, but oh man, this album it's still one of the most played albums in my collection. It is absolutely phenomenal. I own the Mo-Fi pressing, which is great, but I always go to this one because this was my dad's. When he bought when the album first came out in 70, whatever, in the mid-70s, this was his, and for some reason, this is the one I still listen to. But the band is, when people say, Rob, what do you listen to? The Beatles, the band, Blue Rodeo. Those are the first three bands that I say all of the time. So that's how important these guys are. But it was kind of the watershed moment that opened me up to that whole genre of music that I still am immensely passionate about. I talk way too much about Canadian music that no one gives a shit other than myself, and that's where it started. So the band.
I recently watched the Last Waltz because you hyped it up. I was like, it did not disappoint. That was fantastic.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. And the only thing I didn't like about it was the beginning of what's that George Thorogood song? Who Do You Love?
Yeah.
I don't really care for that, but everything else above that was, man. And Neil Young on there, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
That would be cool to see. That would probably be a time I would want to go back to and see that.
Well, Mazzy, Norman Maslow, he was there. He was at that show.
Wow.
Yeah.
No way.
He's talked about it before. And if you ever got a chance to ask him about it, he'll tell you the story. It's yeah,
That is awesome. Wow.
yeah, pretty incredible. I would,
Mhm.
yeah, it would be one of those things again. If I had a DeLorean and I could go back, fuck Woodstock. I want to go to the Last Waltz and have a turkey dinner and listen to that incredible cavalcade of musicians pay tribute to that band. And you know, they didn't know at the time that was going to be their last show, but it was. So yeah,
Yeah, I recently picked up. I got this in the mail.
nice, very good.
Yeah, I didn't really care for it when I first heard it, but then I got this live-ish thing that I got from my friend's dad, and I played that, and that just hooked me on the band. That man, Stage Fright is probably my favorite song. That guy's vocals are just on point on that song.
Well, that's the thing. It's just such a strange band, right? Because
It is, yeah.
you've got three leads. There's 5 guys in the band, but you've got 3 different lead singers, and they all sound very different.
Mhm.
You know, you've got one of the best but most underrated guitar players.
Yeah, that guy he was showing it on the Last Waltz. He was.
Oh yeah, everything about, and the songs they wrote too were so. I mean, a lot of it is very heavily Dylan influenced because they were Dylan's backing band for a while, and the album you've got there, some of those songs are co-written with Dylan. But they sort of, and I can't stand Dylan, but they sort of took his influence and kind of went in a different direction. And, you know, for 4 guys from Stratford, Ontario, which is 40 minutes down the road that way from where I live, they write about the American experience very, very well. But they also write about the Canadian experience. And it's just so good, so different. And I don't know that there was, you know, I mean, they're an incredible group of talented musicians. So I never got to see any of them live. And unfortunately now there's only one of them alive. I have a Robbie Robertson autograph hanging on my wall here, which is kind of cool, but never got to see any of them perform. Never met any of them, but I know someone that knows Garth Hudson and says he is, you know, he's kind of perceived as the gentle giant, and apparently he is every bit the gentleman that he appears to be. So there you go. Let's see here. Apparently Winona has a big brown beaver.
She
Good to
does,
know.
and she likes to show it off every day.
Wes Claypool does a lot with Sean Lennon. And Jack, you have to get, they only come out at night. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll be looking for that.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's go around again. Joe,
Woo.
you can do a 3-fer if you want, because we're narrowing in on the 2-hour mark already. This has flown by.
Okay, fine. We'll finish it off. I didn't show or pull out any AC/DC because then that's all I would have talked about. But they've been around from the start. They continue to be around, so I didn't do any of that. But 1978. It's the summer of 1978. As I have mentioned before, my grandparents brought me up. So summers they kind of tried to take off when they couldn't get rid of this teenage kid. So I went hang out with my aunt and her husband's brother. This is one of those stories. But anyway, I ended up in Cold Lake, Alberta, northern Alberta, in the summer of 78. And the children of my aunt's husband's brother. Anyway, the kid had like a 1969 Chevelle, and it was all done up, and it had the big engine, and it had the big Krieger SS rims on it, and it had big Pioneer 6x9s in the back. And anyway, so we're cruising around Cold Lake, Alberta, and he pulls a cassette tape out, and it's a cassette tape at that point, not a CD, but it's a cassette tape, and he puts it in, and it's the first couple of notes to the start of this album. And I just went, holy shit, we need to go to the record store right now, because that's the first I heard it, was driving around Cold Lake, Alberta in this 1969 Chevelle. The first couple of notes come on, and it's like, oh my God, what is that? Because, and then the rest of the album played, and it just continued. Even all the way up to Ice Cream Man. I still like Ice Cream Man as well. But man, I honestly, I went to the music store the next morning because it wasn't open and picked it up. And then I've been a Van Halen fan ever since in any iteration. I like Dave. I like Sammy. I'd like them if they ever did something together. That probably, that's never going to happen anymore. It was Dave's birthday the other day, but Eddie on guitar, just this group, and David Lee Roth, love him, hate him. He's a goof, but man, he was a great front man. He was a very, very good front man, and he had a great voice, and just all the shit that they did with his voice and all the samples. I don't know if there's a web page still, but there used to be a web page. It was just David Lee Roth samples, and you could kind of like hit it, and it would go ow, and it would do all the different things from all the different songs, and it was great. But yeah, back in '78, like I said, the first couple of notes of this hit, and I was hooked instantaneously. And then back in the day, I was always a big pinball fan. For those that have seen some of my videos, you always see the Kiss pinball machine in the background. But there was this cool arcade. It had a jukebox in it. And it was either Gary Glitter, who we won't talk about, rock and roll, either part 1 or part 2. And then the other one that was always on the jukebox was I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. So again, I'm in my element. It's the middle of the 70s. I'm playing pinball and I'm listening to Joan sing I Love Rock and Roll and Crimson and Clover and everything else. This album, they probably could have just had the whole album in there and it would have got played over and over again. But I love Joan. She's great. She's a badass. And this is a great album. The one before it was great. And yeah, just good stuff. And the Runaways. And then to finish off, because this was kind of our youth, I graduated in 1983, and this album came out in 1982. And We Don't Need No Education. So my graduation album, kind of the album that got me through grade 12 in high school, was Pink Floyd, The Wall. I was a Dark Side fan. I wasn't a huge, insanely, oh my God, Pink Floyd is the greatest thing in the world fan. But this album is probably the album that I would say I've listened to start to finish the most in my life. And it's all 4 sides, because it's sacrilege if you put side 1, the first song on. You have to listen to all of The Wall. You can't stop in the middle, even if your wife's having a baby. That's an example. Or if you're having a heart attack, it doesn't matter. The paramedics have to wait. I have to finish listening to The Wall. But so that kind of finished off high school for me, along with so many others. But obviously I could have pulled out so many more. But and this is Roger Waters, love him and hate him. David Gilmour, I don't think anybody hates David Gilmour. I think Roger is the one that pisses everybody off, and everybody else in the band's just pretty cool. Roger's the knob. But this album, I don't think this is my original. I do have my original. It's over there. But I don't think I have this anymore on it. Not that you wouldn't have known it was The Wall if I wouldn't have shown this one. But
if you don't know it's The Wall, you don't have any right to be listening to music.
Yeah, that's something's wrong. Exactly. So that was kind of my 70s, my teenage years, my high school years. Drinking beer, not a little underage, not that much underage, but drinking beer, kissing girls, and driving around in cool cars. So not a bad way to spend the 70s and a little bit of the 80s.
Does it make you feel old when you talk about in 1978 you were a teenager driving around in the car and I say I was being born?
Yeah, it really does. There was, like I said, there was a couple of things. Daryl's first one he bought, I was already a DJ in the bar. And then I can't remember, you said something else as well. And it was like, I think my kid was 12 already by the time you said something happened or whatever. So, but that's okay. I'm a cool old man, so it's okay. I don't mind being
That's
old.
why we have you on here, Joe.
Exactly. Historian.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Daryl.
All right, so we're gonna end this off with a couple more stories, and that'll be good. So when I had contacted you yesterday, Rob, just about the topic and all that, and you had mentioned Jack was going to be joining us and all that good stuff. Actually, I was really excited about this. And the reason is I'm going to finish this off with a couple of things, I guess, reasons why music is still looking promising, breath of fresh air, right? We got Jack here on the show. When my daughter asked me about this album, and this is the cool thing, is that my daughter introduced me to an album series or whatever it is that I had never heard of. Not a clue, didn't even know what it was. She approached my wife and I think she was 17 or 18, the one Christmas a few years back. And she was like, Mom, Dad, I really want this record set for Christmas. And I went, you don't even have a turntable or anything. And she's like, no, I really want this set. It's a really cool set. So I looked it up and I was like, whoa. I was like, that's like 100 British pounds for the set. It's a 6 album set. And it's an album set called Everywhere at the End of Time. Really strange. Each album goes through the different phases of dementia, but kind of in a big bandish way. It's more of an ambient thing. It looks like this is the first record, just kind of looks like this, something simple. But the reason that I like this, and I mean, the reason it's promising is when you can get the youth involved and doing stuff, listening to the music. My daughter said to me, Dad, can we just sit down and listen to these records together?
Oh,
and I
man,
went,
I can't wait for that day.
I'm good with that. And I mean, some of these records, I mean, I think it's like the fourth one. I mean, they're depressing as fuck, man. Depressing. I mean, when you're going through the phases of dementia, and what it is, it starts off with big bandish stuff, but then what happens is like parts of it start to go missing, right? As it goes through. So it's just a unique experimental type thing. And then the other thing that really gets me into this is like I said, is as I mentioned that, in the case of Jack, I watched Vinyl Nation, this documentary the other day. I mean, it talks about that we gotta ensure, like, we can't be these, and I mean, we've all seen it, right? In the VC, we've seen this, and I'm not saying that everybody's like this, but we've all seen this where you got some serious snobs that put people down for the music that they listen to. But the thing that gets me back once again is just even up here in this little town that I'm in, somebody's like, hey, I got records I'm getting rid of. Do you want them? And you were mentioning that, you don't have a copy of Janis Joplin's Pearl. Well, I got 2 of them in this free box.
That's
These were
cool.
free.
That's cool.
And it's just the thing that I like about the music, the fact that I can still get a record that I get hooked on. Even today, like I'd never, like my mom and dad were not into Janis Joplin by any means. I got that, and I got her greatest hits one in the same box for free, and I'm hooked on it, man. It's just, it's cool stuff. And I get why Jack and a lot of our youth are going back to this, because it's a cool thing. It's hands-on. I get the streaming, but at the same time, there's nothing better than holding a record in your hand, putting it on the turntable, listening to it with your kids and your friends, talking on a YouTube channel, and go to town, just go to town. And I'll end it there.
Yep.
That's where I'm going to end mine.
I love it. That's a great way to end it. All right, Jack. Take us home.
All right. So this is a fairly recent thing I got into. I'd say 3 months ago, maybe. That's a rough estimate. But this band that I listened to just blew me away. And it even it's not my favorite band, and it used to be the Beatles, but they took these people took it, and it'd be the Smiths.
Wow.
Yeah, man. This Morrissey's voice is just I can't. It's just good. But I just recently got this from my sister for my birthday. So Queen is Dead, and I got this. But yeah, I love every single one of their records. And a funny thing about this is my friend, he listened to the Smiths and he didn't really care about it. But then I was like, because he was talking to me about it, and I had seen Embryonic Robot. Of course, he's a big Smith fan, and I heard him talking about it, and I don't know who they were. Yeah, there you go. This is my second favorite, but and then there's just a couple months went by, and then we both I think, what was it? Yeah, I think we just both listened to the Smiths together, and we went through their whole discography, and once I got to this album, the sound on this is like there's a great sounding album, and I didn't think anything could sound this good. Along with like Dark Side and stuff, this just blew me away. And then the song in here, "There's a Light That Never Goes Out," that is one of the most catchiest songs in the world. I think that is just great. And yeah, this band I listened to I listened to all their CDs, and every day I listened to one of their albums. That's how addicted I was. I just listened to them. And I probably listened to these like at least probably 20 times now, and for each of them in the past 3 months. That's how much I love them. They're just fantastic. So yeah, that's the last one.
Oh, that's great, man.
Yeah,
Right on.
I know a lot of people don't like it, but man,
That's
great.
cool. And that's cool to hear, you're listening to them that, like I said earlier, when I got into the Beatles, I just dove head in. And you've done this. I love it's almost like an obsessive compulsive thing. That's and that's the mark of good music when it hooks you like that. Good for you, man. That's cool to hear.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm gonna take it home here. I got 3 more I'm gonna show. This is kind of a weird oddball one that I got obsessed with as a teenager for a good reason. I only own their greatest hits, and I love their greatest hits. And this doesn't connect to anything else, but I became obsessed with the Hollies' greatest hits.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the reason. There was a girl. There's a song called Bus Stop on here, which is about this guy sees a pretty girl at a bus stop, and should I share my umbrella with her? And we're gonna live happily ever, whatever. And at the same time, our large circle of friends, there was a certain young lady that I just thought was the most incredible thing I had ever seen in my life. And to this day, every time I hear Bus Stop, I think of her, who shall remain nameless. And she told me to fuck off and wouldn't give me the time of day. But that's okay. It's all good. But because of that, I listened to the shit out of this, and I love everything on this. And I'm listening to it, Carrie Ann, Look Through Any Window. And then you hear Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress. And just the intro guitar lick off that, I went, whoa, that's a song. So yeah, I listened to the shit out of this album for about 2 years. I don't listen to it a lot nowadays, like maybe once a year I'll get around to it. But that period, 93, 94, whatever it was, this was a big time album for me. The next one is arguably one of the biggest. And this involves another girl. This girl did give me the time of day. This young lady, doesn't sound too sappy, my first love. We dated for 3.5 years, and I loved her. I honestly did. She was an incredible woman. I regret how I ended things with her. We all make mistakes. I have not seen her since. I have no idea where on the planet she is. I hope she's happy. Was a very important part of my life for the end of high school and the very beginning of university. A lot of memories and a lot of music associated with that time in my life because, your first love is marked by a whole bunch of, experiences, and not just that experience, but, a whole bunch of experiences. And she was a giant U2 fan. And as I was going bonkers for the Beatles, she's like, listen to some U2. And this was just before Pop came out. So Pop came out in 99, I think. Maybe it was a year before Pop came out. So I guess Zooropa was the current album, which I don't like. Excuse me. Neither did she. So she made me a mixtape of U2 songs, and she says, I think these are the best U2 songs. I played the hell out of that cassette. And then I went and bought my first U2 CD. She said, I think you should buy Octane Baby. So I did. Holy man, that album just, whatever it did something to me. There's some incredible songs, Mysterious Ways, Try to Throw Your Arms Around the World, even better than The Real Thing, One, Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses. There's not a bad song on this record, and I was just blown away with it. And from that led into Joshua Tree and Rattle and Hum, and then Pop. And to Richard's point, underrated album. Yes, I would agree. There's some shit on Pop, but I also really, really like it. So yeah, this got me into U2. This and the mixtape that my girlfriend made me, and I bought this copy. This is an original first pressing of Achtung Baby, which I bought at Sam the Record Man on Yonge Street in Toronto with said girlfriend. Obviously, I bought it 5 or 6 years after it had come out, but this was in their used section, and it's a first press, and I don't think it had ever even been played, but yeah, I treasure it for a bunch of reasons. It's a first pressing of Achtung Baby. These aren't that easy to come by, but more importantly, all of the sentimental reasons, and that individual meant a hell of a lot to me, and still holds a special place in my memories because of she was an important person back then. So I'm thankful that she got me into U2, and one of my favorite bands. I've seen them a few times, and just phenomenal. I got to talk about this band, guys, because we can't talk about albums that are vastly influential if I don't talk about this band. And if you don't want to hear me talk about this band, fuck off and don't listen. Chance, if you're watching. Gotta close out with these guys, right? These Canadian legends. This is their album that came out in 2000 called The Days in Between. Knew very little about this band. I remember when they came out with Outskirts in 87. I remember hearing about them because they were kind of new and different at the time. They were doing kind of the country rock thing when no one was doing that in Canada back then. But didn't really know anything about them. Didn't know that I knew any of their songs. But in 2000, when this came out, the video for Somebody Waits played on Much Music. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that. And these guys don't look like most musicians nowadays. They kind of look like a couple grandpas. And so I took a flyer and bought this album because I liked the song Somebody Waits. And I fell in love with this album. And then they were coming to play in my hometown. So I found a couple of their other records and realized, oh, I know the song Try, and I know the song Rose Colored Glasses. Oh, okay, I know a few of their songs. And the rest is history. I've seen these guys live 51 times. I've been backstage at more of their shows than I can count. They sent me a video message congratulating me on the birth of my son. One of the guys is a good friend of mine and comes to my house. So there's not a band I love more than these guys, other than maybe the Beatles. But this was the album that started it all. And it's all because I saw a video on Much Music. So there you go.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Right on.
That's it.
And you never have to apologize for talking about those guys. I know you always do, like I do about the.
Well, people give me shit like this jackass in the comments. Who's this Music Talk with John fella?
Yeah, I'm just glad he's okay.
I'm
Right.
glad he's okay. He was
cool.
live last night, and he was reorganizing his music room, so I was on with him for a little bit last night.
Yeah. No, I'm
I
just
love
glad
you,
he's
John.
okay.
You know it, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad he's okay to give you grief.
Listen, you guys are all my friends. If you chuck shit at me, it's all good. So, a few comments here, and then we'll wrap this up. Jack, if you can find Morrissey's Viva Hate, grab it. It's really good.
Yep, I knew when
Richard knows his shit, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who isn't looking for a long, cool woman in a black dress? Absolutely.
Is he heavy? He's my brother. Is that on that, or was that
Yeah.
later? Okay.
Yeah. That's a great song too.
Yeah.
Seeing the Zoo TV tour was seriously overwhelming experience. My best friend Blake, he's a massive U2 fan. He has seen every tour since Achtung Baby, and usually more than one visit on the tour. And he has said the same thing, that Zoo TV, while incredible, was a bit of an experience. I can't. Zoo TV was the tour for Achtung Baby. I would have loved to have seen that. And that's kind of what led into the Zooropa album, which I can't stand. But
Yeah, that's that Lemon song, right?
Yeah.
What album was the Beautiful Day? What album was it? Or
That
was
is on All That You Can't Leave Behind.
okay. Yeah, makes sense.
So it went Achtung Baby, then it went Zooropa, then Pop, then All That You Can't Leave Behind.
That song plays a lot of my work.
Yeah, that's a great
That's a
song.
good
Great
song.
album. I saw them on that tour. It was incredible.
Ooh.
Loved it. John says, I'll be live soon if this thing ever ends. Well, it's going to end in a few minutes because I've drank like 1.5 liters of water and I really got to pee. So we better wrap this up soon.
There you go. Exactly.
All right. We'll do what we always do. We go around the horn and talk about what you want to talk about. Talk about if there's something you want to mention on your channel or whatever. Jack, since you're our guest of honor, you have the floor, man. Anything you want to promote or talk about? Or
I just want to talk about a lot of things for my YouTube channel. I got a lot more views recently, and so I've been very excited about that and
Good, man.
happy about that. So that's pretty cool. And I got some pickups recently. I just got this one, of course, I showed, and then I got this recommendation from Rick Beato, one of his videos about one of the best-selling albums.
Cool.
And then I got one of my favorite Bowie albums.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is a pretty modern person, Tame Impala. You ever heard of that
Yep.
guy?
Yeah, from Australia.
Yep.
I heard about him through the Wiggles.
They opened. I think they opened for them, didn't they?
Well, so here's the thing. The Wiggles did a cover of Elephant, which is a Tame Impala song.
Yeah, that's
And
on
actually, their cover went to #1 on the Australian charts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's available on a 45, and I'm trying to get it. I'm a Wiggles parent. I mean, when it was Anthony, Lockie, Simon, and Emma, I saw the Wiggles live twice because I had a 3-year-old at the time. So I don't like the Wiggles now, but back then, aces. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. Fuck, it's
No.
you got the floor. I'll shut up.
I like hearing about that. And then I just got another cool video I got up is about the stuff I got from my great aunt, her record collections. That's pretty cool. I got a bunch of new 45s. I got the I Love Rock and Roll that you showed. I got that on 45s. That's pretty cool. And on picture disc, not picture disc, picture sleeve. That's pretty cool.
John, Jack's channel it's just like your name here, Jack the Music Guy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's
Very
about
cool. That's good, Jack. Daryl, what's cooking with you?
Honestly, not a whole lot. I'm just trying to watch some documentaries and stuff while I got this week off. I don't want to make any promises about my channel. The last 2 weeks I've talked about that weird words and songs. I'm going to try to get some videos out. I kind of had to put some things on hold just with company up for the weekend and stuff. So hopefully by the week's end, I'll have a couple more videos up, but I'm not going to make any promises. Like I said, just trying to watch some documentaries. I might delve into that Tragically Hip one that you were talking about, Joe. I saw that up on.
Thank you.
What is that, on Netflix or Prime?
It's on Prime.
Right.
Yeah. And then I saw that there was an early, like a really early documentary. I think early 2000s, like 2004. There's one about Motorhead. Considering watching that one too, but I wish they would make a modern one about Motorhead.
Yeah.
I always liked Lemmy and Motorhead, but
there's some good stuff. There's an Iron Maiden one that's coming out not till I think like March of next year. That'll probably be good. They seem to do well, and so I think that more and more are going to continue to get made. And yeah, you'd think Lemmy, like not necessarily just Motorhead, but talking about Lemmy back to Hawkwind and then just how he's such a god to so many out there, right? So there is one thing. Oh, he's part of that one about Live on the Sunset Strip, I think, right? Where they show him he's sitting in the bar that he always goes to, playing his video poker machine and things like that. So that one's not too bad. But yeah, I don't need to tell you to watch the Tragically Hip one. Just watch it. So
Yeah, and one last thing. I mean, I mentioned at the beginning, at the top of the show there. If you haven't seen it, the 2023 documentary, the Nickelback one, Love or Hate. I mean, even if you don't like Nickelback, I gained a whole new perspective on those guys after watching that. Just kind of reminds me of the whole David Beckham situation, where I mean, these guys got kids in school and they're like semi being threatened because people hate the band, and it's like they're a band. Love the music or don't, press the next button if you don't like it, and I don't know, I guess I gained a new appreciation for them. So if you haven't checked it out, that one's on I think that one's on either Prime or Netflix. I can't remember, but yeah.
I think that one's on Netflix. I think. I'm not positive, but yeah, I enjoyed it. My lights are going to my voice, which looks silly. Anyway,
my recommendation: check out the Nickelback one, 2023 doc.
Awesome. I don't have any new videos. Well, I'll probably have something for the store, like another. Yeah, I know. Like another 12 things that don't belong here. So, follow along on a vinyl. There's probably not a lot for you there other than, if you want to come, if you're coming to Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, then you're going to come to On a Vinyl. But what I do want to do, I was going to do it off the top and I didn't. I saw, and I'll do this quick. I saw a show last Friday. Didn't have a chance to ever see these guys before, and they're from Regina. So that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And Glenn talked about them in a video that you should watch with a bunch of Canadian kids talking about Canadian music, but Glenn brought them up, and they are the Dead South. Really good. How to describe them? It's tough, but go and see them. I highly recommend going to see them. They're very good. I would say Steve Earlish, some of his later stuff, not necessarily Hillbilly Highway, Guitar Town, Copperhead Road, but latter or more recent Steve Earle. Bluegrass, there's the banjo in the song, every song, and but really, really good. And angry bluegrass sometimes too, which is the way that I thought I'd describe them. But folk, country, angry bluegrass, banjos. One guy plays the cello, but he plays it. He's really good. So go and see them. I think they've got 5 out. This is one of their early ones. That was their most recent. And then quickly, for the alt country fans, and I'm not sure how many are out there, and I'm not sure how many are here, but a guy out of Australia called Henry Wagons opened for them. He's got a couple. This is his most recent. This is from a couple of years ago. And alt country, I think, is where he would fall, but almost traditional at times as well, especially the new one. There's a young lady by the name of Queenie. He's from Australia, so I'm not sure if maybe it says featuring Queenie on a lot of the songs, on like 3 or 4. She's on there with him, but he was hilarious. It was just him and a guy playing keyboards and some electric guitar. He would kind of fill in. He'd sing some background vocals. He was a fantastic performer, fantastic singer-songwriter. So if you get a chance, stream some Henry Wagons. There's one on here. There's lots on here, but look up the song. And again, it's not his best example, but where is it? Felix Granger, the Finger Pickin' Boy. He's also got one called Willie Nelson, but good stuff. Hilarious guy, super nice. Sat and talked to him for a little bit. He obviously got the album signed. Only artist that I believe at the merch table ever had tea towels. Yes, you heard that correctly. Tea towels. That's what he had. And he was signing these tea towels. He goes, take them, hang them up over the thing on your kitchen sink drawer. That's what I want you to do. These are the tea towels, not t-shirts. He had records and he had tea towels, and he was hilarious. And he's opening up for the Dead South. So a great show if it's coming anywhere near you. And I think they're coming east. So you should check them if you can, because they're really, really good. I'm not sure they're going to get up to you, Daryl, and I'm not sure they're going to get down to you, but good stuff. I recommend for anybody watching. I recommend.
They're in my neck of the woods all the time. So
Yeah, and this was the first time in 5 years they played here. I'm not sure. They just didn't want to come home. And they are everywhere all the time. And super good. Really good live, good folky, bluegrassy. And check out Henry Wagons. I can't say that enough too. I really thought he was hilarious and a very good singer-songwriter as well. Rob's gonna have a drink quick.
God, my throat's killing me. I did not do my regular Sunday video that I do every single week because it was Canadian Thanksgiving and I was at Tom Cochran's concert the night before and I was just too damn lazy and I didn't have an idea. So there was no video last week. But there will be one this Sunday. I also really need to get one of our episodes of Canadians talking about Canadian music over to Chance so that it can get up on the community podcast. So that's going to happen. Other than that, you mentioned concerts, Joe. I just heard yesterday that the Trans Canada Highwaymen are going out on tour next spring, and the rumor is there's a new album.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. I won't miss them a second time. Not sure why I did.
I'm not going to miss them either. They're coming to Waterloo, so I'm going to go see them in Waterloo. So,
yeah, it was for no other reason than I just didn't go. Like, it's not like I didn't want to see them. It's not like I didn't know what I was going to get. I just didn't go, which is not like me because I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to see stuff. And we got to find Rob tickets to Oasis in Toronto. He doesn't want to travel. We want to get him in Toronto.
If it doesn't happen, it's all good. It's all good.
Oh, no, it's going to happen, my friend. We'll get something.
I'm going to wrap this up or else I'm going to explode in a moment. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this topic because I love hearing people's stories. And Jack, it was an absolute thrill, man, to have you on. You're welcome to come back and join us anytime you want. This was great because, and I think I speak for Daryl and Joe too, you restore the faith in us grumpy old bastards that there are kids out there that still have some taste in music. So I hope you had fun, man. This was a blast for us.
Yeah, I had fun. I liked hearing the stories from you guys.
That's great. Daryl, Joe, thank you, gentlemen. Always fun. We'll be back next week with another guest. Hopefully I can convince Emma to join us. She wanted to join a couple weeks ago, but scheduling. So hopefully it'll be Emma. Might be somebody else, but we'll be back next Wednesday. So to all the folks watching in the Peanut Gallery and all the folks who are going to watch later on, thank you for spending a couple hours listening to us idiots talk about music for a couple hours. It's gives us an excuse just to hang out, which is fun for us, and we enjoy interacting with all of you. So thanks everyone for the time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Take it easy.